again, people. Here we go. Day 6. Kenosha trial. This horrible prosecution. Before we start, I wanted to cover George Floyd's cousin made a video kind of threatening the jurors, saying they better find him guilty or I'm going to release their names. I'm not sure what jury tampering is. He didn't say it was going to cause harm. Releasing their names, I'm not sure. That's going to kind of be public, so it's not much of a threat, but it's still trying to get more riots started. I don't know why they don't go after these guys for inciting a riot, whatever. Anyway, that's just something that if the jury heard, will that influence them? Wouldn't influence me if I was on the jury. I wouldn't give a shit. Knock yourself out. But it may influence some people. And the judge may have addressed this, but we didn't hear about it. So they're still keeping a lot of things from us on this trial. So here we go.
Delete the video and return the phone to him. I've instructed that if it happens again, they're to take the phone and bring it here. So that's for your information.
So somebody took a video and released it or tried to release it or did something. I don't know what it was, whether it was juries, whatever. And they deleted the video and gave his phone back, and he said he's going to take the phone next time. Now, I don't know why he just wouldn't bar him, why he wouldn't just say, when you enter this courtroom, if you take any video and release it, you're going to be in violation of a court order. I'm ordering you not to do it, and you'll be arrested. And that would probably stop that shit.
Number 2, unless there's some request, I'm not going to address anything further about our conversation of yesterday at the close and later. And then,
Is that person been showing up in court, Your Honor? The person who's been
I don't know the answer to that. You can talk to the lieutenant when you get a chance. And then,
Okay, so in case somebody's wondering why I keep jumping to Wikipedia, PBS got some little special thing here. So you can tell my mouse is a pointer now, and then it changes to a link. So they have this whole big link here that takes you to PBS Wikipedia on the bottom of their video. And YouTube usually pushes their propaganda here. Normally this big wide thing is CDC or some other propaganda they're pushing. But that's why if you see me clicking, sometimes I got to stop and I end up on Wikipedia. That's why. All right, here we go.
We were talking about exhibits that hadn't been moved that I think the parties are in agreement to.
Okay.
So 64, 65, 66 are ones that are agreed upon. The only one that is not agreed upon at this point is 69, which is the statement, the written statement by the officer regarding Gage Grosskreutz that I had questioned him about yesterday. I had marked it. I would move that, and I think the state has an objection to that statement.
all right. Mr. Mayor?
Your Honor, the statement was used to impeach the witness. I think some courts do things a little differently. I don't recall off the top of my head. Sometimes those aren't marked as exhibits. Other times they're marked but not admitted into evidence. The bottom line, Your Honor, is I don't think the jury should see it. So as long as we don't show it to the jury, because it was only used for impeachment, I don't have any strong objection to how we handle it. I think, generally speaking, things that are used for impeachment are not admitted to evidence. They may be marked as an exhibit, but not admitted into evidence. So that's where I'm at on that.
Did you want to say anything further?
Judge, it would refer to, I wouldn't ask that it go back, because at this point, the entire document had not been read. But I think based on the way it was used yesterday, it would be appropriate to make it part of the record. So
I'm going to receive it for, it'll be received as evidence. But however, those portions which were not directly quoted in the examination will not be argued, nor will they, because that part is not in evidence. And the exhibit will not go, certainly not in its original form, to the jury room. Okay?
While we're cleaning up exhibits, Your Honor, if I may, exhibit number 3, I think, has also been marked as exhibit number 57. That's the Grosskreutz live stream, and I double marked that by mistake. But I would move both of those. They're identical. Into evidence. Any objection on that?
Any objection? Received.
Yesterday, I also used exhibit 10, which is Ford Fisher News to share. I thought I had moved it. According to the court's list here, it's not been admitted yet, so I would move that in.
Objection? Received.
We also used the crime lab ballistics report, exhibit 23, with Henry Williams, so we move that into evidence. 23.
Objection?
So if you don't know what's going on, he's amazingly moving things into evidence. And sometimes they do this very quickly, and they'll catch the defense not paying attention. That's an old lawyer trick to, I'm just going to add all these things if you're okay with it. And they'll give a big stack, and you won't look through it, and you'll miss the one page that they really don't want you to see. So what he's doing now is saying, I want to enter this, I want to enter that. And then when you hear the judge say objection, he's asking the defense if they have any objection. If they don't, it's automatically entered. So he could enter anything he wanted, and if they didn't object, it would be entered.
no, I have no objection.
Received.
That's all we have right now. Thank you.
All right. Ready to go then? Okay, I'm calling the jury.
Okay, here comes the jury.
You're aware, of course, of the incident at the bus pickup this morning, and I've been assured that the officers had the video which had been taken has been deleted.
Whoa, it sounds like somebody followed the bus and videotaped him. Which is kind of interesting, because if the bus is in a public place, the Supreme Court's already ruled you can videotape in a public place. Government videos all over public places. You have no expectation in public, yet they took his video and destroyed his video. That's got an interesting legal dilemma there.
And new procedures are being instituted so that something like that should not recur. I'm frankly quite surprised that it did. And we have different procedures to do with respect to if it would occur. So I'm not.
Meaning government failed again. We're incompetent, but we're going to fix it if you just give us more money and more people, because that always fixes things with problem.
I don't have any particular concern about it, and we're very sensitive to this entire issue and are on guard about it. Thank you. All right, Mr. Binger.
Judge, the state will be calling James Armstrong to the stand.
James Armstrong.
Mr. Armstrong, can you please state your first name and spell it for the benefit of the court reporter?
James.
Employed.
I'm a senior forensic imaging specialist with the Wisconsin State Crime Lab in Milwaukee.
And what do you do as a forensic imaging specialist?
He's a senior. You left out senior. He's a senior.
Senior.
We handle a variety of internal and external requests. Internally, we handle a lot of photography of evidence, including fingerprints and footwear. Sure. We handle, within the forensic imaging unit, we handle a variety.
You got freaking wood doors that probably cost $4,000. You've got all this trim. You got this huge building, and you got a freaking $1.99 microphone. Government at its best.
Of internal and external requests. This includes photographing fingerprints and footwear, along with also doing forensic video analysis as well.
What is forensic video analysis?
So examination of video pertaining to legal matters.
And what is your educational background?
Okay, so this is basically he's just analyzing things, making sure it wasn't tampered. He's going to get all the video and basically verify all the video shit. I'm not sure he's a really critical witness that's going to say anything, so I'm going to probably be bumping past this.
Bachelor's of Fine Art in Photography from Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design.
And have you worked in photography or anything else in your past? You do some sort of forensic imaging. Is there any kind of peer review process or anything that is done to check your work?
Yes, all the work that we do within forensic imaging is tech reviewed by another qualified analyst, and it's also administratively reviewed as well.
Oh, that's like having a cop verify everything another cop does. That's a good system. We can trust that, right, pesky citizens?
So when you're doing forensic imaging, does that include things like obtaining stills, zooming in? What kind of things do you do if you're forensically looking at a piece of video?
Yes, it requires us to examine the video, note any limitations of that video, and then provide any clarifications of that video if requested.
And have you been asked in this case to look at any video or other photography evidence?
Yes, I've been requested to look at different video that's been submitted to the lab.
I would ask that Exhibit 24 be put on the screens. Mr. Armstrong, I want to show you what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit 24. You look at either screen, whichever screen is more comfortable. Does that look familiar to you?
Yes, it does.
And what is that?
Those are 3 clarified images that I produced from item U, from video file that was submitted as item U.
So video file was submitted by me, and you found an image and you clarified it.
That is correct.
How do you go about doing that?
I utilize a variety of software. In this particular case, I used AN5 to enhance and clarify that image.
Now, is it your job to figure out what is in the image, or are you just providing, or attempting to provide more clear or viewable images?
In this particular case, the request was just to clarify the item of interest in this video.
If I could have Exhibit 25, please. It's Exhibit 25. Do you recognize that?
Yes, this appears to be the video that I annotated as part of a request.
What do you mean by annotated?
I added the square box and the labeling to this video.
And is it your job to actually say who is who in the video, or are you just pointing out people of interest that have been designated to you?
I'm just pointing out people as designated.
And how did you go about making this exhibit?
Who told you?
To make this exhibit, we load the video file into AN5, and then I essentially draw on that individual frames as it goes through, and then output a video.
Can we play Exhibit 25, please?
I just simply annotated that video.
Let's show you what is marked and previously entered as State's Exhibit 26.
Objection.
I'm asking for that. This has already been answered.
I heard it, and it is. States Exhibit 26, okay.
26. Mr. Armstrong, do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
And what is this?
This is another annotated video with an arrow.
And did you create this video as well?
I did, yes.
Similar to the last video, did you simply annotate it? You didn't change anything about the video?
That is correct, yes.
I'd like you to please just briefly play Exhibit 26. Now, again, is that someone you've identified or someone that was designated to you to mark?
That is someone that was designated to me to mark.
Mr. Armstrong, in this case, were you ever given a video and asked to get still shots of a snippet of a video?
Yes, I was.
And are you aware if that is the BG on the scene video? Do you recall?
I do not exactly recall with regards to that video, no.
But fair to say that we asked you to look at a short segment and produce every still image that you could?
Yes, that is correct.
And were you able to do that of this video?
Yes, that is correct.
And do you know how many stills that you received from that video?
729 stills.
And this morning, before we came over here, did you view a folder that had those stills?
729 stills from one video. Wow. A lot of government money being spent on this terrorist kid that's trying to defend himself from violent terrorists that the cops are ignoring. Perfect.
In the, from the video?
Yes, I did.
At this point, I'd like to mark and move a folder named Frames, which is States Exhibit 80. I'd like to move that into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
81. In addition to those videos that you've already mentioned, have you recently done any more forensic imaging work in this case?
Yes, I was provided another video file as item X.
And what did you do with item X?
With item X, I enhanced and enlarged the video file and cropped it to the area of interest.
I'd like to show you what is marked as States Exhibit 81. Do you recognize this?
Yes, that appears to be the video's clarified video that I exported.
Now, did you have any difficulties clarifying or tracking this file?
The limitations of this file include the movement of the camera, movement of the person, and the lighting conditions that are present.
Now, you mentioned limitations. Did all these various videos you looked at have different limitations?
Yes, each had their own set of limitations.
I'd like you to, is this, I know did we watch this video this morning?
I believe so, yes.
And is it a true and accurate copy of the exhibit that you created of that drone video?
It appears to be so, yes.
I'd like to move Exhibit 81 into evidence and play it for the jury.
No objection.
Go ahead. Proceed.
If I can have Exhibit 82, please. Mr. Armstrong, do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
What is this?
This is a video, again, clarified, and cropped into area of interest, and this video is slowed down by 50%.
And is it a true and accurate copy of the video that you've created for this exhibit?
It appears to be, yes.
Please, I'd like to move Exhibit 82 into evidence.
Notice he says it appears to leave a leeway. That doesn't sound, it is the video. I'm not sure why he's saying it appears. Sometimes you want to say it appears, I think so, if you're not sure. But he should be sure he did the video. I'm not sure why he's saying it appears.
And publish it to the jury.
No objection.
Proceed.
I'm assuming they're looking at this.
Mr. Armstrong, did I give you a specific area to sort of focus in on in this video?
Yes, you instructed that I look at the area near the sign, near some vehicles, and then as the person enters into the parking lot.
Were you able to zoom in tight on that area?
Not beyond what has been provided now.
Can you go back to Exhibit 81? Behind that, there's a black vehicle there. Be 81 again. And Exhibit 82, please. Could you point out, again, it's to the rear of that black vehicle. Have you been calling it the Duramax in this trial?
Yes.
Oh, the front of the vehicle, I apologize. Yeah, you may sit down, thank you. Do you recognize this?
Yes, it appears to be the video that's been clarified and then enlarged as well.
And is this a different part of that same drone video?
Yes, this is a different segment, picking up from the stopping point of the previous video and continuing on to where the video, the camera view turns away from the area of interest.
Is it true and accurate copy of the exhibit you created?
It appears to be so, yes.
Could you, I'd like to move Exhibit 83 into evidence and publish it to the jury?
No objection, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Oh, so I think they're getting right here to where he spins and points his gun at him to try to get him off. Right when they're throwing the bag, I
Evidence
might
and publish
add.
it to the jury?
No objection, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Okay, so let's go by this frame by frame because they're going kind of quick. Okay. So he's running. Here comes the bag being thrown at him with whatever's in there. I mean, he can't. It's obviously not his important medication that he's throwing. I'm sure all that weight and all that distance is from an empty bag. How far can you throw? Hopefully the defense will be, how far can you throw an empty water bottle? Doesn't that bag seem to be thrown pretty far? Because see, what they want you concentrating on is Kyle right here turns around and points his gun at him. So he spins as this guy throws something at him. And it almost hits him. He's running backwards right now with his gun, trying to tell the guy to stay back. And then he turns and tries to get away again. I mean, this video really shows that he was trying not to shoot this guy and was trying to get away and was continually being stalked and chased and attacked and mobbed. And here comes the other guy supposedly with a gun. So I want to hear what they have to say about this, though. Here we go.
Could you, I'd like to move Exhibit 83 into evidence and publish it to the jury?
No objection, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Man, that happened in a split second. I mean, do you know how fast that freaking happened? Watch this gunshot. Boom. Did not try to run away, did not try to hide. That's where he gets on the phone. Calls his buddy. Says, I just shot somebody.
If I could ask for Exhibit 84, please. So everything else the same, it's just slowed down by half?
That is correct.
I'd like to move Exhibit 84.
Did you say 50% or 60?
50%, Your Honor.
So is this the little weasel dude that's working for the ACLU that's following? Because it sure does look like he's chasing right along with him. He's chasing and he's chasing. Remember, use of force is what's in the mind of the person that used it. Was it reasonable? How can you say that was unreasonable what he did? Being chased in a violent area. He was threatened by the guy
I'd like to
earlier.
ask
I'm
for
gonna
State
kill
Exhibit
you.
85.
This is another clarified and enlarged video showing from approximately the 15-second mark until where the camera turns.
I'd like to move Exhibit 85 into evidence. The jury.
No objection.
Proceed.
Is that ACAB? Standing all cops are bastards or bad or what? I think that's what they painted on this poor citizen's car.
Exhibit 86, please. Well, and if I could just direct your attention to number 86.
Whole life changed in that 1 second. His whole life may be spent in prison. His whole life is over.
Okay, I have no further questions. Thank you.
So I'm not sure what he's going to say. He didn't ask him any questions about who did what or why they did it. He basically just showed the video and slowed it down. I'm not sure why they'd ask questions on this.
The exhibits we've just shown the jury, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, and 86. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you began working on putting them together on Friday.
I began working on them on Sunday.
Okay. When did the crime lab receive them?
The crime lab received that as a submittal on Sunday.
Okay. And who submitted them to you?
It was ADA Jim Cross.
Okay. And you're familiar with the fact that we didn't receive these videos until Friday of last week?
I was informed that that was the circumstance, yes.
Okay. And
So, see, he made this point, but he didn't clarify it. See, that's a huge issue. Exculpatory evidence has to be turned over to the defense, especially during a trial if you're going to use it. So the defense, or the prosecution had it. They had it reviewed. They had it slowed down. They decided whether or not they were going to use it. And when they found something they could use a week later, then they decided to discover it. That's bullshit. See, they should have gave it to him immediately and say, hey, we have new video. You may want to look. It may clear your client. But that shows the dishonesty and deceit of this trial. But you know what? No problem. That's why everybody goes, man, you got to give Brady, that's very tough. No DA is ever disciplined in the history of Brady or exculpatory evidence for withholding. No DA in history has been held accountable. And when you don't hold them accountable, just like cops out there shooting everybody, jumping in front of cars saying I was in fear of my life, that's what happened. It becomes more and more, and people do it because they know nothing's going to happen.
when you do this, you're not adding color, correct?
That is correct. I'm not adding color.
You're not adding pixels.
With regards to enlargement, there is interpolation, and so pixels are added to that.
Okay, how is the color's not changed?
Color is not changed.
So if you blow something up 10%, what does that do for the pixel number?
The pixels will increase by interpolation of that area.
Okay, and what was the resolution of the source video for 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, and 86?
I would need to refer to my notes in order to be able to confirm that.
Please do, sir.
Okay, so the reason why they do that is if you ask them a question, you don't know it independently, you can ask to refer your notes to refresh your recollection, but you can't read from your notes.
The resolution for that file, it was 19.
See, he's reading. Now, if he did, I'm surprised the prosecution ain't objecting, but that's his witness, so he's not going to object to his own witness. If this wasn't his witness, the prosecution would go, objection, Your Honor, he's reading. He can use the paper to refresh his recollection, but he can't read from it.
1920 by 844.
And in layman's terms, what is that?
That's 1,920 pixels by 844 pixels.
Okay. And that's kind of tells you the clarity. The more pixels, the clearer it is.
The more pixels, the higher resolution, there's more information present.
Okay. And if you have to look at your notes, that's fine. Videos are done at certain speeds. So certain videos, whether it's a phone or whether it's a camera, they do it by frames per second.
That's correct.
The more frames per second, the clearer it is.
Not necessarily, no.
Okay. This one, how many frames per second, sir?
This video is 30 frames per second. 30.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that. He's a video expert. You get more clarity out of 60 frames per second than you do at 30. You're getting more snapshots. You're getting more information in a shorter amount of time. How can that not be more?
This one, how many frames per second, sir?
This video is 30 frames per second. 30. 30.
So every 1 second, 30 different frames.
That is correct.
And you can use how many frames go by to time certain things, correct?
You can, yes.
Okay. You can use different videos if you can find a common event, such as a sound, to sync up videos to tell the whole story, correct?
That would be starting to move outside my area of expertise with that.
Okay. But you're familiar that it can be done, correct?
I'm familiar that could be done.
Okay. And what is that called if you know?
I do not know.
Okay. And you can take different videos from different sources, linking them through a common event, sometimes sound, put them together for a whole compilation.
With regards to audio, that's outside the scope of my expertise.
And you can also do it from events on the video if they have a common event, not audio, but a common event.
It depends on the video.
So right now, if you're sitting on a jury, why is he asking these questions? Attorneys like to get into this shit, and it's like, if the jury doesn't know where you're going, why you're going there, or what point you're trying to make, you're just boring them, and they're like, why the hell am I sitting here? Mate, why are you asking these questions? Are you insinuating that he added, that he didn't, that he could have, that the video isn't accurate? If that's what you're saying, then say it and say why you believe it.
In question.
Okay. And in this case, when you put the marks person of interest, who told you to do that?
That was provided by the requester, ADA Jim Cross.
Because you don't know anything about these videos when you get them or anything about the case. You're just told, we think this person's important, we want him followed.
That is correct.
Okay? And in your case, I think you used yellow arrows.
I did, yes.
Okay? I have nothing further. Thank you.
Any redirect?
No, thank you.
You may step down, sir.
Yeah, he was kind of a non. I'm surprised he even questioned him. Let's see who the next guy is.
That's what to help you guys.
Doctor, could you please state your name and spell them for
Doctor.
the benefit of the court reporter?
My name is Doug Kelly, Dougkelley.
And are you a doctor?
I am.
And what kind of doctor are you?
I'm a forensic pathologist.
So he actually finished doctor school, which is probably why he's not out there. Most of the people writing are just entering or about to enter doctor school.
What is a forensic pathologist?
Well, pathology is the field of medicine that involves the study of disease and trauma in the human body. Forensic pathology is a subspecialty of that, which specifically involves the principles of medicine and science as they apply to the law. So, as a forensic pathologist, we're concerned with determining the cause and manner of death in people, and typically we act as medical examiners in medical examiners' offices. So, we'll look at those issues in people who fall within our jurisdiction.
And where do you work now?
The Milwaukee County Medical Examiner's Office.
I know you were that the Milwaukee County Medical Examiner does handle the forensic pathology for Kenosha County.
That's correct.
What is your educational background?
I graduated from Illinois Wesleyan University in 1990. I graduated in 92 to 94. Louis University and St. Louis Forensic Pathology Fellowship with the Milwaukee County Medical after that.
Since then?
Yes, I have.
Do you have an idea of how many autopsies you performed?
I'm at or a bit above 6,000 at this point in my career.
Now, are those all homicides or are those all different kinds of deaths?
That's a lot of dead bodies. Damn, 6,000? Man, you've been digging around dead bodies a while, dude.
Oh no, those are all kinds of different deaths. So homicides are only a part of what we investigate.
Now, did you become involved with the autopsies of Joseph Rosenbaum and Anthony Huber?
Yes.
I would like to show you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 20.
An autopsy report on Joseph Rosenbaum.
And is it true and accurate to the best of your knowledge of copy of your report?
Yes, it appears to be.
I'd like to move Exhibit 20 into evidence. Sir, if I'd ask you, Doctor, I'm sorry, if I'd ask you to put that down and let's look at the other exhibit there, which has been marked as State's Exhibit 21.
Rottonbum.
Okay, Exhibit 21 is a copy of my signed autopsy report on Anthony Huber. It also includes the 2-page toxicology report from our toxicology laboratory.
Is that a true and accurate copy of the exhibit or of your report?
Yes, it is.
Let's-
I'm board certified in anatomic pathology, clinical pathology, and in forensic pathology.
And do you hold a medical license?
Yes, in the state of Wisconsin.
Are there any professional organizations to which you belong?
To the Wisconsin Corners and Medical.
Doctor, I'd like to focus on Mr. Huber first. Do you recall when you did the autopsy on Mr. Huber?
That would have been after he died and was brought to my office.
Yeah, the autopsy on Mr. Huber was done on the morning of August 26th of 2020.
And that would be the day of or the morning after that he deceased?
That was the same morning that he was pronounced deceased, yes.
Now, how is a body brought to you up in Milwaukee?
When someone is brought
Do you take walk-ins?
to us, our investigators admit them to the facility. They are given a unique identifier. They are then basically stored.
the corner where I worked had a coffee mug. Said, "My day begins when your day ends." Rick, you can't be making jokes. Oh, be quiet, you big crybabies.
In refrigeration until we have the opportunity to perform an examination on them.
In this case, you were able to do an examination on Mr. Huber fairly quickly?
Yes.
And how do you begin, let's ask it this way, how did you begin your examination of Mr. Huber?
Well, an autopsy examination, it consists of many components, but the first thing that we do, or the first thing that I do, when somebody comes to me is I look at them as is. I will look at them, take photographs, collect any evidence that I find, and then we'll remove any clothing or anything else from the body. Again, examining the body, collecting any evidence I find, taking photographs, doing what's necessary. Those photos are taken before anything is cleaned up, and so that's the next step, is to clean everything up, any fluids that are on the surface of the body, any dirt, and then again, same process, looking at the body again. The final thing that we do is do the internal examination, which is really what I think more people are familiar with when they think of an autopsy. We make incisions and that allow us to look at the organs and tissues, and again, we are looking for any evidence of trauma, any evidence of disease. We're collecting evidence as necessary, specimens for toxicology, taking photographs, and in the end, we put together all of this information from the external and internal examination to determine the cause of death.
And were you able to determine the cause of death to Mr. Huber?
Yes.
And what was that cause of death?
Mr. Huber died from a gunshot wound to the chest.
And is that an opinion given with a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
It is.
And what can you tell us about this gunshot wound?
So Mr. Huber has an entrance wound that is just below the left nipple. It basically travels through his chest and creates trauma to both of the lungs and specifically to the heart. There's a lot of damage to the heart. So he has a large amount of blood within his body cavities, his chest cavities. And the projectile didn't exit. There's actually a bruise and with some scraping to the surface, and it's located to the right shoulder just beneath the collarbone. And in that location, I collected a bullet fragment. So this is the single gunshot wound, and it created lethal injury involving the heart and lungs.
Now, why would that gunshot wound have been lethal? What would have killed Mr. Huber?
The trauma to the heart and lungs is pretty extensive from this wound. So he bled from the wounds that were created by the gunshot.
Okay, so when he's talking about trauma, they're talking about a bullet makes a primary cavity and a secondary cavity. The primary cavity is the same size of the bullet. It's the hole of the bullet. If I shot you with an arrow, you would have a hole where the arrow's at. That's called the primary cavity. But when you shoot something with a lot of velocity, like a 223 or 5.56, any rifle round, you get up above 3,000 feet per second, you have a secondary cavity, and it displaces tissue and fluid and muscle so fast that it creates this large secondary cavity. And that secondary cavity is what causes this trauma that he's talking about. It can cause blood loss, bruising, it can stop organs. So a secondary cavity can do as much, if not more damage, as the primary cavity. And a 5.56 or 223, which is an AR, it travels at 2,800 to 3,000 feet per second, some faster, some slower, depending on barrel length and powder, bullets, etc. Distance.
Did you find any blood inside of his body?
Yes, he had blood within both of his chest cavities.
And do you recall how much blood?
He had about 1,200 milliliters of blood, or over a liter of blood to the left chest cavity, and he had 2 liters of blood to the right chest cavity.
So, to the best of your knowledge, would it have been the loss of blood that caused death, or the damage to the organs, or a combination of both?
A combination of both.
Now, what was the trajectory of the bullet, or the wound path?
This wound path had a trajectory that was left to right and upwards.
Now, when you're talking about trajectory, what are you relating it to?
Well, in order to have
he better get specific here, because a smaller bullet will ricochet off bone and things, and it will not take a straight path. So if he's going to try and say that it came up and out because he was turning away and trying to leave, they should be able to eat him up on, no. 223s are commonly, you're shot in the knee and it comes out your ass, or you're shot in the ass and it comes out your shoulder. Because those bullets, they're small, they're pointed, and they ricochet and they change direction within inside the body. So saying, like, this is an arrow, it went in here and it went out there, therefore the person must have been standing this way, is not going to hold weight and is not accurate. I don't know if he's going to say that, but I just wanted you guys to understand that.
a standard set of criteria to be able to discuss trajectories. We put the body in something we call anatomic position. And simply put, the anatomic position is with the person standing straight up with the palms forward. So the person's left is left, the person's right is right, superior and inferior, up and down, and front and back are relative to that person. So it's that simple. We're just creating a standard position that we can that we can relate to.
So, Doctor, would I be demonstrating the anatomic position right now?
That's correct.
So even if I was, let's say, shot in my stomach area from somewhere on the ground and the shot went up, I'm sorry, let me reverse that. So no matter where I was shot, it would matter the bullet how it traveled from my head to toes and from my left to my right.
Correct.
I couldn't hear that really well, but I think that was inappropriate. Or not inappropriate, but incorrect. He's taking if the bullet goes straight. Now, when you shoot larger rifle rounds that have a lot of mass, and you get into 200 and 300 grain bullets, those don't ricochet as easy. But a 5.56 and 223 is like a 55 grain bullet. It's a very light bullet, and it's the size of a 22. It's a little bit heavier than a 22, but it's about the same size as a 22. So those bullets ricochet and do not follow a straight path like a heavier bullet.
Were there any other notable injuries or findings on Mr. Huber?
Mr. Huber had some little abrasions or scrapes here and there, and he had a good size abrasion or scrape to his right thumb, and he had some abrasions or scrapes to his knees and to the inside of his elbows. Little abrasion or scrape to the lower back. When I did his internal examination, he did have a little area of hemorrhage to the left side of his scalp, the deep scalp, but no injuries to the skull or to the brain itself. So the other injuries were minor injuries, scrapes, and little bruises, but nothing of significance.
What does that indicate? So the defense ought to be asking, what are those other injuries indicate to you? Was he in a fight earlier? Was he dragged? Was he knocked down? Did the bullet cause those other injuries? You want to separate those.
Is there any way to tell if they were a part of this gunshot incident, or could they have been pre-existing injuries?
Oh.
No, these injuries could have been pre-existing injuries, and there's no way to age a bruise or a scrape to any accuracy. So all I can say that those injuries were present.
I don't know if that's correct for a dead body, maybe aging bruises, but you can absolutely age a bruise on a person by taking a picture day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4, and you can see the process of it. And so there's a lot of statistics out there on what bruises do, what colors they change, when they change this color, and when they start healing. So I'm not sure why he said that.
Let's show you as marked as states of 87. Hopefully the monitors have remained on. I guess this is on. 1 second, please.
It appears that this, this is the entrance wound. It's not clear in this photo because it appears that this photo is the one with the, there is a patch over it which was placed during resuscitation. There's it's kind of a plastic gel-like patch that is placed over wounds to try to contain bleeding. And so that's over the wound, so you can't really see the entrance wound very well in this particular photo.
Now, where is that wound?
Well, you can see it. You can see the hemorrhage there in the middle. It's red.
I mean, I'm sorry, I should ask that better. Where in the body is that wound?
Oh, this is the wound to the left side of the chest. It's just under the nipple.
I'd like to move exhibit 87 into evidence.
So this is this looks like a photograph that shows his face and upper chest.
I'm really surprised that they're showing this, but I mean, this is what the jury see, and it's tough. That's why I'm saying all these people are like, man, the defense has really done a great job, and they're going to win, and that's not how cases are decided. Pictures like this stick with a jury, especially women who have a son, and they think that could be my son, and it's very hard to get over this.
What you're looking at there to the...
What's this tattoo here? Huh.
The purple area to his right shoulder, that's the location of the bullet. The bullet is underneath the skin in that location, so it's right below the collarbone. Face and upper chest.
So the bullet entered in this area, and it came out here. So if he tries to say I think what they're getting at, I think this is where the defense is going. He was sideways when he was shot over here and faced away, which is total BS because cops shoot people in the back all the time. And when you decide to shoot, sometimes people move after you make that decision. And from the time you pull the trigger and a bullet hits to them, they've already changed position. So that should be an easy thing to go if the defense does it.
What you're looking at there to the purple area to his right shoulder, that's the location of the bullet. The bullet is underneath the skin in that location, so it's right below the collarbone.
There are a few markings on him. Can you take that pointer that is in front of you there and point out this purplish area you're speaking of? There should be a wooden pointer right in front of the... Nope.
So this is probably hard for him to look at because this kid didn't want to kill anybody. Anybody watching this think this guy went out there to shoot people? He didn't want to kill anybody. He was scared to death. He was defending his life.
Yes.
But it was still inside of Mr. Huber. And so do I understand your testimony, that's where you found the bullet?
Yes.
But it was still inside of Mr. Huber?
Yes, this bullet was underneath the skin, right underneath that bruise.
If not already done, I'd like to move this into evidence. The next exhibit, please. Sir.
The lower part of his face to the left of the photo, the white things on his body are defibrillator pads, so this is from resuscitation. Again, you can see the two wounds that we just showed. You can see the purple injury to his right shoulder, and you can see the red area of hemorrhage surrounding the entrance wound, which is to his left side of his chest. It's covered by
they're not showing this picture.
A patch that's meant to contain hemorrhage.
So, Doctor, if you just could you please on that screen, to the best of your knowledge, trace what the path of the bullet would have been given those two injuries?
Sure.
Exhibit 89, the autopsy of Mr. Rosenbaum.
Yes, I did.
Do you recall if these came in at the same time, or if you did one first, or do you have any recollection of that?
I don't have a recollection of that. Mr. Rosenbaum, his examination was performed the following day. It was performed on August 27th of 2020.
And
You notice he's reading his notes, right? So the defense could technically be, Your Honor, is he referring to his notes? Because he needs the court's permission to do that. And you'll notice, watch the doctor. He is looking down before he gives dates.
recollection of that?
I don't have a recollection of that. Mr. Rosenbaum, his examination was performed the following day. It was performed on August 27th of 2020.
It looks like he's looking down. Maybe he's not. See right there? I thought he was looking down. And if he's doing that, he's not allowed to do that without the court saying it.
And did you do the same procedure that you described, Mr. Huber, in terms of taking photographs and initial appearances, and then cleaning, and then doing a further examination?
Same procedure.
Is there anything different about how Mr. Rosenbaum came to you, or appeared to you?
When Mr. Rosenbaum came to the office, his clothing had been removed. He had been to the hospital, and his clothing had been removed. Whereas Mr. Huber came with his clothing still on. But
looking down.
Aside from that, I don't think. Then the other thing was that Mr. Rosenbaum came with the hands covered by paper bags.
See? He's looking down. He read that. He didn't remember that. So he's actually reading from his notes, which he's not supposed to do. And the defense can object. I don't know if they should, if it would be a good move, but technically they can. Are you testifying from memory, or are you testifying from reviewing your report? You can review from your report, but you have to get the court's permission to, if it'll help refresh your recollection.
To protect possible evidence, but other than those things, I think that I don't think there was anything else.
So what did you first notice about Mr. Rosenbaum?
Mr. Rosenbaum had several injuries that were related to gunshot wounds. That's what I noticed initially, yes.
And did you perform any x-rays on, or any other imaging on Mr. Huber or Mr. Rosenbaum?
Yes, x-rays are taken prior to the autopsy examination. That allows us to look for skeletal injuries as well as to locate any projectiles or projectile fragments, bullets or bullet fragments.
Were you able to come to a conclusion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty on what caused the death of Mr. Rosenbaum?
Yes.
What was that?
Mr. Rosenbaum died from multiple gunshot wounds.
And in his physical examination, was there anything of note that would have led to a questioning or a addition to that cause of death?
No.
See, I'm not sure if the defense can stipulate that they're both dead and we don't need to do this because the jury doesn't need to hear this. But see, this is what the meat and potatoes of the prosecution. This is where you tug at the heartstrings of the jury. This is where you show them and you impress them on how accurate and how thorough they are. This really has nothing to do with whether or not Kyle Rittenhouse was in fear of his life and whether he was in self-defense. But it's on the burden of the state to prove that there are dead bodies and how they died. So, but I'm thinking the defense, and if there's a lawyer out there, I'm thinking the defense could stipulate to this and do away with all this bullshit, and they would just admit the report and evidence.
No.
Do you know how many gunshot wounds, that you found on Mr. Rosenbaum?
Mr. Rosenbaum has a number of injuries. There are 2 injuries in which the bullet entered the body and did not exit, so I collected bullets from those injuries. There's a 3rd injury that is a graze wound in which the bullet just grazed the skin superficially. And then there is a gunshot wound to the left hand and an area to the left thigh that appear to...
Whoa, that's good. He's got an injury to his left hand because he was reaching for the barrel. How close was the hand? Could you tell if the hand was burnt from fire or whatever on the hand injury or the hand injury? Hopefully they got a picture of it. And if there's burnt powder embedded in the skin, that means he was really close, which would corroborate he was reaching for the freaking gun. And he got a graze wound, which means Kyle wasn't aiming and trying to kill this guy. He was running and moving and trying to get away, and Rottonbum was attacking and charging and trying to get him. So because they both moving, that's how he got the grazing round.
Be separate, but may actually be, I think they're related to the same gunshot wound.
Now, before we get too far into this, what is stippling?
Okay, so I think to explain that I have to back up one step and just remind you that more than just the bullet comes out of the end of the gun. Flame comes out of the gun, smoke and soot comes out of the gun, unburned gunpowder particles come out of the end of the gun, and of course then the bullet comes out. what we do in forensic pathology is we look for injuries on the body or evidence on the body that allows us to estimate the distance of the muzzle of the gun to the surface of the body. And so in contact wounds, we might actually see scrapes around the entrance site from the muzzle of the gun, from the skin actually hitting the muzzle of the gun. It's called a muzzle stamp, so that's a contact wound. Out to a certain distance, soot will actually be able to deposit on the skin. It's obviously not very aerodynamic, so after about a foot or so, soot is imperceptible. But it depends on the weapon to how far that can be seen. But soot will tell us that the muzzle of the gun is within a pretty close distance. And then the gunpowder that comes out, those little gunpowder particles, they also have a velocity to them, so they have energy. So they have kinetic energy that can cause damage to the surface of the skin. So when they hit the skin, if they have enough energy, they can actually cause little scrapes. And those little scrapes or abrasions are little punctate, little round punctate or small elongated injuries to the skin that surround the perforation. And of course, the closer you are, the more dense it is. And as they travel through the air, they spread out and create a wider and less dense pattern around the injury to
Kind of like a shotgun shell. It spreads out as it goes. That's what the gunpowder does. It's a splatter pattern.
Until a point where you can't see them anymore. They don't have enough energy to create an injury on the surface of the skin. That is called gunpowder stippling. So when the gunpowder creates an injury to the skin, we call that gunpowder stippling, and that indicates an intermediate range gunshot wound. So that's just one of the things that we use to estimate the distance of the muzzle from the surface of the body. And then everything else is referred to as indeterminate because we can't tell. We don't use the word distance. We use the word indeterminate because we can't see anything. That doesn't mean that something didn't get in the way or filter out the gunpowder particles and the soot. So we just say anything without any evidence of gunpowder stippling or soot around a wound is indeterminate. So when you talk about gunpowder stippling, we're talking about an intermediate range gunshot wound.
There's a term I see in your report called pseudo-stippling. What is pseudo-stippling?
Obviously, anything that hits the skin and leaves an abrasion will leave a mark that we will make note of. If something other than gunpowder hits the surface of the skin and creates those abrasions, we'll refer to those as pseudo-stippling. And so if the bullet goes through an intermediate target, so if it goes through another body part, if it goes through a window, if it goes through a door, the particles of those surfaces might actually travel with some force downstream and hit the surface of the body, creating those same types of injuries. But those look very different than gunpowder stippling. They vary in size and shape. They sometimes are.
This is what he's describing commonly as clothes. A lot of times you'll shoot somebody through a piece of cloth, and that cloth will get pushed into the skin or into the wound, and you will find pieces of whatever the person is wearing, especially if they're wearing jackets, heavy-duty cloth, etc. The bullet's going to go through all that and push it, especially if it's a hollow point. It's going to collect a lot of that things and bring it into the wound, where if it's a point like most rifles to where it's a bullet point, it usually doesn't drag as much into the wound.
Irregular, some are small, some are big. But that's called pseudo-stippling, and that can be caused by a number of different things, as I just pointed out. It can also be caused by a bullet ricocheting off of something, so it can break up a surface and cause those particles of the bullet and particles of that surface to travel and hit the body.
I'm not sure how the defense could use it, but you can get stippling on the body and not get hit by the round. So if I'm standing next to you and you shoot a gun by my ear, you're not even aiming at me and you shoot someone else, when you're by my ear, the gunpowder force and heat can actually cause stippling on me, even though I wasn't hit or even though I was or may not have been the target. So I'm not sure how the defense could use that is there stippling when a person actually isn't shot. I don't know how that would help them, but I just want to put that out for you guys.
And so that's called pseudo-stippling. It's not the same as gunpowder stippling.
I'd like to first talk about a gunshot wound to the pelvis. What can you tell me about that gunshot wound?
Man, a pelvis shot's a good shot. We call it the pelvic girdle. It used to be you train cops to shoot 2 to the body, 1 to the head, which was called the Mozambique drill. You got a body armor on, you get 2 to the body, the guy doesn't fall, the next shot goes to the head, and they call that the Mozambique. Well, it was later modified to where 2 to the body, 1 to the pelvic girdle, because most body armor does not go below the belly, and if you hit anywhere in that hip area, which is usually a lot larger than the head, so you're less likely to miss, because when people go 2 to the body, 1 to the head, they miss the head, and if the guy's got body armor, then they're on you or they're returning fire. But if you go 2 to the body, 1 to the pelvic girdle, which is what I would prefer teaching, and I had people practice that a lot when I was training cops, is I want that pelvic girdle, because even if you don't kill the person, a lot of blood, a lot of bone, and a lot of maneuverability is impacted when you hit the pelvic girdle. So that's usually a one shot. The guy ain't advancing. You may not kill him, but he's not coming at you anymore.
So Mr. Rosenbaum has a gunshot wound to the right side of the pelvis, or actually it's to the right side of the groin, and that gunshot wound passes into the body and hits the pelvis, creates a quite bad fracture to the right side of the pelvis, and then that bullet continues, and there is an area of bruising to the right buttock. There's actually a little perforation where the bullet couldn't quite get through, but in that location under that.
So you notice that all these supposedly high-powered, dangerous rounds are not even leaving the person. I mean, a body is stopping a bullet that started out traveling at 2,800 feet per second, and the body is stopping these bullets. He's finding all these bullets inside the body. So when you hear all these left-wing idiots that don't know anything about guns talking about, oh, an AR assault rifle was a very powerful, really large, huge, it's all bullshit. They just don't know what they're talking about. But I digress.
A little incomplete exit, that's where I found the bullet from that gunshot wound. So this gunshot wound actually has some stippling, gunpowder stippling associated with it. It's to the lower abdomen, and interestingly enough, where his waistline is at, there's no stippling below that point. So it's not surrounding this entrance wound, it's actually above to the abdomen, but it's because he's wearing the clothing, and the clothing didn't allow that gunpowder to get to the surface of the body in the groin region, but it did in the lower abdomen. So we see that gunpowder stippling to the lower abdomen. It's associated with this entrance wound to the right groin, and that is an intermediate range gunshot wound.
So what is intermediate range?
I was about to say, you need to describe intermediate, because that's to what I think. When you get stippling, you're within grabbing or lunging distance. You're not getting stippling out at 10, 15, 20 feet. That normally doesn't happen. It just, gunpowder is so light and it loses velocity so quick once it leaves the barrel. When it's leaving the barrel, it's being forced out by all the pressures of the explosion of the bullet, the round, the primer, etc. And all that compressed is trying to get out the barrel. As soon as it hits the air, it starts slowing down and it doesn't have the mass or velocity to keep going. So it drops off very quickly. I'm interested on what he's going to say, how close you have to be. My guess would be 3 to 5 feet max, but I mean, maybe you could stretch it to 10, but I think you're looking at usually within 1 to 3 feet, personally.
As I said, intermediate range is, it depends on the weapon and the type of ammunition used. Typically, when you see gunpowder stippling, you're looking at a muzzle to target distance of a few feet. But again, it depends on whether you're...
A few feet, 3 feet, which is what I would agree. I think he's being honest. I think that's, in my opinion, that's probably what I would have asked. 1 to 3 feet, you might see it at 4 or 5. Highly unlikely, but again, if you're using a really, like you're using a 50 caliber and you're in front of that sucker when it goes off, you may get stippling at 8 or 9, 10 feet. But most guns, especially a .223, I'm not thinking you're getting much after 3, 4 feet max.
You're talking about a handgun or rifle or such. I would say that in this particular instance, we're talking about something within a few feet, within 4 feet or so.
And that's knowing that the defendant fired with an AR-15 rifle with .223 caliber ammunition?
That's right.
So you'd estimate that, trying to be clear, you're saying that he was about 4 feet away or he was within 4 feet?
Oh, you see how he worded that? That was very, very tricky for those not paying attention. He didn't say he was 4 feet away. He could have been as close as a few feet, which means he could have been 1 foot. But he's going to straight it as he was far away and no threat. That's what they're trying to get. If he was far away, he could still get stippling, which means he wasn't a threat and he couldn't have grabbed the gun. All that was said in that little slide 4 feet away. Did you get that? Now, jurors that aren't thinking critically and really evaluating and understand the games that the government plays, they will miss that little subliminal hit that, oh, he wasn't even that close. He couldn't have grabbed the gun. He was 4 feet away. Bullshit.
I'm saying that, well, the best way of putting it is the only way to be more accurate is to test fire the weapon and see what kind of a pattern you get.
Good answer. Did you do that test? Did the government do the test? If the government wanted to say he was 4 feet and he could get it, then they should have done the test.
Density of that gunpowder stippling pattern might help you somewhat, but this is pretty spread out. So all we can really say is that it's within a few feet, but I can't be any more specific.
Good for him. But what the defense needs to say when they come back is when you said a few feet, that means he could have been as close as 1 foot or as far as a few feet. Is that correct?
And what was the path of that gunshot wound?
It's basically front to back and a little left to right.
And in your medical opinion, is this the kind of shot that would have resulted in loss of life?
It's not an immediately lethal wound. No, obviously, all gunshot wounds can produce morbidity and mortality, but in this particular instance, this is not an immediately lethal wound.
That's not really what he asked. See, he implied that the first shot didn't kill him, but in fact, it could kill him. If he laid there and bleed out, it's a blood-rich area in the pelvic girdle area, and he very easily could have bled out from that one wound. I'm not sure how that matters, but...
Now, doctor, I'd like to talk to you about a gunshot wound. Did you find any wounds to the hand?
The left hand has a gunshot wound. It's a very complex wound. There is tearing of the skin to the palmar surface at the base of the index and middle fingers. There's a tear that extends up the middle finger, and there's actually a lot of soot to this area and tearing to the underlying.
Now, soot means he was even closer than a stippling.
Soft tissues. That soot continues to the other fingers of the palmar surface of the hand. This wound is associated with fracturing to the first bone of the index finger, so the bone just beyond the knuckle. That bone is fractured by this wound path. And then it exits to the back of the hand, just beyond the knuckle of the index finger. So if we were to put this into anatomic position, which we talked about a minute ago with the palm forward, the trajectory of this wound path with the hand in anatomic position is basically front to back, right to left, and a little bit upwards.
Did you recover any bullet fragments from that wound?
No.
Small area, not a lot of meaty tissue. A hand is basically small bones with a light layer of skin. That's why he didn't find a bullet or bullet fragments. It went right through that like butter. No problem. When you get into large, meaty areas with tissue like lungs, body, chest cavity, your breastbone, muscles, that slows the bullet down much more efficiently.
You mentioned that, was there any stippling or any or soot or anything of that nature in this wound?
This wound does have soot associated with it. There's a fair amount of soot to the, like I said, the palmar surface of that hand. So clearly this wound represents something closer, what I call a close range gunshot wound.
Okay, this is where the defense really needs to get in. Because he's saying soot, I would have asked, was there any burning or charring to the skin, which would indicate he was like right at the barrel getting burnt, grabbing the gun. This is a good issue for the defense to make some progress on he was grabbing that damn gun.
And do you have any idea where that bullet would have went after it went through the hand?
Notice the defense didn't explore that at all. They don't want to do that because they want to confuse the jury and hide from the jury. This is not about getting to the truth. This is about the prosecution winning, and they're playing with a kid's life, putting him in prison forever, and they're playing these little stupid reindeer games and confusing and not giving the jury a good picture. This is a really unethical prosecution and unethical prosecution in my book, just as a whole.
I think that it makes sense that this wound is associated with another wound that is to the lateral or the outside of the left thigh. It's kind of to the lower left thigh, but that area has a very irregular, large area of abrasion and multiple small perforations. And in one of these perforations, I actually recovered a small fragment of a bullet. The X-ray shows that there's additional, very, very small metal fragments in the left thigh as well.
So let's get to the credibility of this witness. In my opinion, he's credible. He doesn't have an agenda. He's speaking facts, and he's giving information. Now, maybe he's helping the prosecution a little bit by not mentioning things that could help the defense, but he doesn't appear to be picking a side or trying to promote a theory. He's just basically testifying the bullets, where they were in the body, what he found, etc. To me, that's a credible witness.
As well, which I didn't recover. So this injury to the left, outside of the left thigh.
Let me rephrase that. He appears credible. He could be lying through his freaking teeth. We don't know, and I haven't seen any indicators, but he appears credible.
This is very characteristic of a ricochet type wound. In other words, I think the bullet hit something, ricocheted, breaking up the bullet, and that surface, and that showered the left lateral thigh and created these injuries. It appears that the gunshot wound that could have caused that would be the one related to the left hand as well. So I think that the gunshot wound to the left hand passed through, made impact with the pavement, and fragmenting some of the pavement as well, and that this created the injury to the left thigh as well as to the left hand.
Now, the hand injury, would you consider that to be an injury that would quickly cause death?
No, that's not a lethal wound either.
And this injury to the left thigh, is that the kind of injury that would cause death?
No, it's not.
Would it be fair to say that's something of a superficial wound?
Yes.
Now, I'd like to talk to you about a gunshot wound to the head. What can you tell me about that?
Man, Kyle got his butt. You know what? I don't think Kyle was aiming for anything, to be honest. He was getting his gun taken away, and he fired off 4 rounds as quick as he could to get a guy off him. I do not think he was aiming at the head. He wasn't aiming at the hand. He wasn't aiming at the pelvic girdle. He wasn't aiming at the concrete to cause a ricochet. All this goes to the chaotic situation that he was trying to get away and was being attacked. If you had a bullet pattern like on a target and you had 4 shots right in the heart area, you would have a different case. These bullets are on different parts of the body, which indicates fighting, moving, resistance, grabbing. I mean, this is really good for him not wanting to kill and not in a comfortable situation to where I'm going to go out and shoot a guy and just aim 4 shots to his head. Now, defense is going to make this seem like Kyle killed him by going to his head. Those shots were so quick and so, within a second that just isn't the case. But if the prosecution can convince the jury that that's what Kyle did, that will help their case and convict an innocent guy. Total bullshit.
To the right frontal area of the head, so basically the right lateral forehead, there is a graze wound, as I mentioned previously. So this is a superficial injury in which the bullet grazed the surface of the skin or created an abrasion or scrape. And based on the appearances of the edge of this wound, it appears to be traveling in a back to front and downward orientation. And there's obviously no bullet or bullet fragments recovered from the body on a wound like this.
So when you're saying back to front, the bullet actually made contact towards the rear of the head first and then traveled towards the front of the head?
Yes, it's the angle is sharply downwards, but it's from back to front and downwards.
Which would be consistent with him falling from getting hit in the pelvic girdle, and as he went down, his head was down, and because he was fired in rapid succession, one of the bullets grazed his head as he was going down. Doesn't mean he aimed. Doesn't mean the guy's back was turned and he was trying to get away, which is what the prosecution is kind of slightly suggesting.
Now, would that be considered to be a wound that would be immediately fatal?
No, it's not.
Now, Doctor, I'd like to talk to you about a gunshot wound to the chest and the abdomen. What can you tell me about that gunshot wound?
Well, this gunshot wound to Mr. Rosenbaum, it enters the back about an inch to the left of the upper midline. And this is the one that passes through the right chest cavity. It creates a great deal of injury to the right lung. There's blood within the right chest cavity. It then perforates the diaphragm at the base of the lung and enters the liver, which is right under the diaphragm, creates a great deal of injury to the liver. There's fracturing of several ribs in association with this wound path as well. But then the wound path, after creating all this injury, it passes into the right flank, and there was a bruise to the right flank under which I collected a bullet.
Now, we've talked about how the other injuries were not ones that would immediately cause a mortal wound. What impact do you believe that this gunshot would have had on Mr. Rosenbaum?
This gunshot wound is a lethal injury.
And what do you mean by that?
This gunshot wound is the one that would cause death as a result of the injuries to the lungs and the liver with the hemorrhage and the injury to the organs themselves.
And is that to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
Okay, so what the prosecution is trying to say is that he meant to kill him. He shot him in the back. It was a round that didn't need to be fired. Poor Rosenbaum or Rottonbum was laying on the ground and giving up, and Mean Kyle just shot him in the back, and that's the wound that killed him. It wasn't self-defense. That's total bullshit. Those rounds were fired so quick and so sporadic in a quick encounter where he was being attacked. If a cop had done this, none of this would be being talked about. Cops shoot people 14 times. They do mag dumps all freaking day when the guy isn't even armed or isn't even coming at them and they're in a car. So this defense really needs to get into, and he kind of missed a chance when he had the cops up there. Would you defend yourself this way? Do you think this is reasonable? Doesn't cops shoot multiple times, many times, once deadly force is authorized until the threat is stopped? And if the threat's moving, cops are deemed necessary and it was valid force. Why is it different now? Because the government wants him and the government doesn't want cops. That's the difference, which is why this is an unethical bullshit prosecution.
Now, what was the trajectory of this gunshot wound?
This gunshot wound is downward, left to right, and back to front.
I'd like to pull up the next exhibit, please, on Mr. Rosenbaum. The size of Mr. Rosenbaum during this autopsy?
His height and weight, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, he's 5 foot 4 inches tall, and he weighed 153 pounds.
Little man syndrome.
Dr. Lichowitz marked as Exhibit 90. What is this?
You're looking at the graze wound to his head.
Now, when you say it's back to front, how can you tell that?
In order to determine that, you have to look at it very closely. You have to look at the edges, and typically a projectile that travels along the surface of the skin will create tearing of the skin. And the way that it tears the skin helps you to determine its direction.
You notice they stopped showing the photos on camera. I was kind of surprised they did the first ones, but they stopped.
In this case, the direction of the tears tells you the direction the bullet is going. So it kind of pushes through the tissue, tears it as it goes, and it's those specific tears as you go along that you can use to determine this.
So you indicated the trajectory of this bullet was back to front and downwards, and that's in the anatomical position.
I'm glad Kyle's looking down and he's actually showing that he's emotional and he's upset about this and he's not proud of this, because the jury are looking at these pictures and then they are glancing over to him to see his reaction. So his reactions is going to play on them on whether or not he's a hard ass and tough guy and is cool and militia and out there trying to kill people versus a young kid that was scared and made a mistake and now he's kind of ashamed and not proud that he killed these guys.
That's correct.
I'd like to move Exhibit 90 to evidence. Now, Doctor, I'd like to show you Exhibit 91. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
What is that?
What you're looking at is to the left side of the picture next to that scale with the numbers on it. That's the knee of the left leg. And right above the left knee, you're looking at the lateral left thigh. And the injury is that area of scraping or red abrasion right above it. It's very irregular in its appearance.
Now, is this the injury that you've opined was caused by debris or by a bullet fragmenting?
Yes, by ricochet.
And is there evidence of the pseudo-stippling which you talked about?
You can see that in addition to the main body of the there above it and below it, and those little areas are separate impact sites. Those are separate projectiles, if you will. So this entire area is an atypical.
Exhibit 92, please.
This is a picture before cleaning up. It's a picture of the palmar surface of the left hand. So this is where the injury to the left hand is located.
And can you indicate, if you can, where the entrance wound is?
So if you look at the middle finger, and to the right side of the middle finger, it's really difficult to see in this particular photograph. But to the right side of the middle finger there, that's where the beginning of the injury is at. That's where the entrance is, so to speak.
I apologize. Could you use that pointer and point it out? It is difficult to see.
Area, entrance.
When I give you that, and why don't you just state?
Those entrance. There's also.
Steve?
Doctor, what are we looking at here?
This is a photograph that shows.
Let's move Exhibit 93 into evidence. Now, and that is the exit wound that you marked as 94.
Left hand, along the two. All that black material is the soot.
I'd like to move Exhibit 94 into evidence. And Doctor, what is this?
A bit better, you can see the injury to the middle finger here again. You can see the irregularity to it. You can see the black soot. You can see some soot up here as well. In the background, you can see the tearing. But
Okay, so he's pretty much doing a prosecution, what dance, whatever they're going to say, he's going to explain. I'm not sure we're going to get anything out of this.
To the left side of the back.
Evidence. Doctor,
The removal of
This live footage is out there, so if you want to go watch it, it's easy to find.
Here at the base of the index finger, and again, there's a finger. Body of the rounder was on.
I'm not sure
is it
where
fair to
that
say you performed an investigation?
Yes, we collect information about the circumstances of the case. We'll look at photographs, scene photographs or other photographs. We'll look at video from scenes. We'll look at a lot of different things in order to understand the circumstances better and perhaps help us to answer other questions.
And did you review anything else in this case that would aided you in your investigation in terms of Mr. Rosenbaum?
Several things were reviewed from Mr. Rosenbaum. Specifically, a video, YouTube video, was referenced to exemplify the circumstances of the shooting. I reviewed some other records, medical records, and things, which is routine. But that was about it with Mr. Rosenbaum.
What about the tox? What kind of drugs did he have in his system?
Do you recognize this?
Yes.
What is that?
I think that appears to be an introductory screen from a video that was referenced to me. I was told to look at this video for reference in understanding or in seeing the scene of the shooting better.
And is that because it's the same video that Dr. Jensen, the defense expert, reviewed?
Yes, I believe so.
After watching that video, are you able to tell us anything about the first two gunshots?
If trying to determine some kind of order of gunshots.
Sorry, I was eating a snack.
Obviously, the autopsy itself is not going to allow us to do that. We can use the injuries and the details about those injuries to help us, but the autopsy alone is not going to allow you to do that, and also is not going to allow you to know what position the person is in when they were shot. We put things in terms of anatomic position, but we seldom know exactly what position they were in when the gunshot wound was incurred. So the use of the video can sometimes be helpful in answering those questions. And really, with regards to the video, and there really was only one very small portion of that entire video that helps me, and I think that it's the portion where there's actually some sound, so I can hear.
Since you watched the video, I think it would be appropriate to ask him, do you think the hand wound was when he was reaching for the gun? And he would say yes, that would get in there to the jury. Now, they may object, but I would try to get in there. Since you saw the video, did it appear that he was grabbing a gun and that's when he could have got somehow get that in there for the jury so they can hear you say it, hear the guy testify to it, and then let the prosecution object?
Hear the gunshots and see the position of Mr. Rosenbaum at the time that you hear the discharge of the weapon. And so that's what I use the video for, is mainly to just see what position he was in when I hear those gunshots. And so really knowing that he had these gunshot wounds to different areas. He's got an entrance wound to the front of his body, the right groin. He's got an entrance wound to the upper back. He's got a graze wound to the head. And so in looking at the video and paying attention to his body position when I heard the discharge of the weapon, I was at least able to say that the only time during the interaction in which he could have incurred the gunshot wounds to the back and to the right side of the head is when he's more horizontal. And the only time that happens is the last two gunshot wounds. So I think the first two gunshot wounds are represented by the injury to the groin and the injury to the left thigh. There is it's not the greatest video not the clearest video, but right after the second gunshot wound, there's also some kind of a cloud. It seems there's some kind of a cloud of smoke or something like that. And I felt this was consistent with a bullet hitting the pavement and creating that cloud, and therefore that would be related to the injury to the left thigh. So really, that's how I use the video, just to determine when he's in position to receive certain gunshot wounds.
So, Doctor, is your testimony that in the video you reviewed, which the jury has seen, the first gunshots are while Mr. Rosenbaum is facing Mr. Rittenhouse?
Yes.
And you said that at least one of those was intermediate out to 4 feet away?
Yes.
Wow, see, he's stuck in at 4 feet again.
And then you see in the video that Mr. Rosenbaum continues going forward and he begins to tilt or fall. And is it your opinion, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that the back to front shots to the head and then the kill shot to the back would have been while he was falling or perpendicular to the ground?
The only way that the trajectories of the gunshot wounds to the right side of the head and the back make sense is if he's more horizontal to the ground, and that is occurring at the time that the last 2 gunshot wounds are heard on the video.
Doctor, in your, to the best of your medical knowledge and opinion, if an individual is moving forward and they sustain that injury that entered by the groin and went to the hip, could that cause them to fold forward and kind of move
Oh, so he wasn't grabbing for the gun. He fell into the gun. See where they're going?
forward or move down in a downward position?
That's possible. There's a very complex fracture involving the right side of the pelvis, which may make the pelvis in the right leg more unstable, but all I can say is that that's a possibility.
Someone is pointing a rifle at you, an AR-15. Do you have an explanation of how that hand could be positioned that would result in the injury shown?
I would object out of his scope of expertise. He's about the body. He's not there for holding a gun, but, you know, that's just me. It may not go.
And then also perhaps the injury to the thigh from that same round?
Well, as I said, this is a close-range injury, and so his hand is in close proximity or in contact with the end of that rifle.
Woo! Ding, 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 ding. Nice.
So you can kind of think of it in your head. You know, if you put the end of the rifle close to that trajectory through his hand, you move the hand around. You can put it in different relationships to the body that can explain that. Typically, by turning the palm towards the ground, it would make sense that it could go through the hand, hit the ground, and then create the injuries to the left side of the thigh.
So it's consistent that the hand with the palm was to the ground, and then it would have entered by the middle finger, gone through, and then exited the end of the index finger, and then hit the ground?
Yes, exactly like he's doing, like in a lunging or grabbing fashion is the term that the defense needs to use. This injury was a result of a grabbing type movement of the arm extending, reaching for the barrel when he see that. Would you agree with that? That's the way, or something to that effect, they should word that.
Yes.
And just to be clear, we've only heard 4 gunshots. Is it possible that the 4 gunshots caused all 5 wounds?
Yes.
Everything further, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to make this a new video for the cross because this has gone an hour and 17. All right, we'll be back. This is day 6, first part.